Welkom terug. Ilse Marie Leroux bekyk 'n nuwe debat wat opgevlam het oor staatstoelaag aan armes.
Die minister van Maatskaplike Ontwikkeling, Lindiwe Zulu, het onlangs aangekondig dat 'n basiese inkomste-toelaag, oftewel die BIG, vir armes oorweeg word. Die tipe toelaag poog om landsburgers wat nie 'n inkomste het nie, se armoede te verlig. Volgens Statistieke Suid-Afrika verdien diegene onder die sogenaamde boonste broodlyn minder as R1.227 per maand. Dit is nog nie duidelik watter vorm die toelaag sal aanneem nie, maar sou 17 miljoen werklooses elke maand die bedrag ontvang, sal dit die regering sowat R21 miljard per maand kos, oftewel R252 miljard per jaar. Ondersteuners van die idee hoop dat 'n basiese toelaag kan help om werklooses uit armoede te lig, klein sakeondernemings op die been te bring en om die ekonomie te stimuleer deur spandeerbare geld in mense se hande te plaas. Ander kenners meen dat dit verdere afhanklikheid van die staat kan kweek en dat dit gewoon onbekostigbaar is. Na grootskaalse staatsingrypings tydens die COVID-19-pandemie word toelaag as 'n vorm van ekonomiese ingryping nou reg oor die wêreld heroorweeg en gedebatteer. Daar is ook 'n debat oor universele basiese inkomste, oftewel UBI. Sekere politici en ekonomiese kenners meen dat elke enkele volwasse burger in 'n land 'n geringe inkomste deur die staat betaal moet word. Dit sal volgens hulle 'n positiewe ekonomiese uitwerking hê.
Ek gesels nou verder hieroor met Bronwyn Williams, ekonoom, toekomskundige en vernoot by Flux Trends. Bronwyn, it seems everybody is talking about some kind of basic salary support in the form of a grant or income. Why are we talking about this now?
Well, I think that what happens is that during times of crisis, of social crisis, which we're definitely in right now in 2020, wherever you look, whether you're looking at what's going on with protests across the world or the COVID crisis, we've had a whole lot of crises that have culminated at the same time. And what happens in these times of turbulence is that the ideas that are lying around start getting airtime because we need new ideas to fix our old problems. And universal basic income in various different guises is definitely one of those ideas that has been lying around for some time. Particularly it was promoted by people like Milton Friedman back in the mid-20th century, and even by people like Martin Luther. They were also interested in these sort of concepts, that'd be Martin Luther King, also in the mid-century last year, or last century. And what the concept of universal basic income is, it's quite attractive to people on various sides of the political and ideological spectrum. That's what makes it quite palatable. So people that have more of a libertarian tendencies, like Zoltan, who is running for president in the United States, or whether it's people more that come from a more socialist type of ideology, also seem to think this is a good idea. On the more libertarian side, people are interested in things like universal basic income because it's a way to simplify the welfare state and cut down on deadweight loss. On the more socialist side, obviously, it means that people are able to get money to redistribute cash from those who have a bit more to those who really need cash in order to live a decent living lifestyle.
Bronwyn, so a basic income grant in South Africa, will it work? Is it a good idea?
Well, once again, it comes down to not just whether it's a good idea in theory. I think the real question for us here in South Africa is whether it is feasible in practice, given our various different constraints. So we try not to ask about whether it's a good idea in principle or not, because obviously it's a good idea to get cash into the hands of those who need it most. But the question really is, where is this cash going to come from to fund such programs? Because they are very, very ambitious. And even the minister who's proposed it here in South Africa is asking those very same questions. The reality is we're looking at something like a 300 billion rand tax shortfall and economic growth that's going to be wiping out around 5 years worth of economic growth coming out of the 2020 crisis. So we really have a big hole to fill that we have to figure out where this cash is going to come from. And essentially it boils down to around about 3 options. The one would be increased tax, but once again, when you're facing what could be upwards of 50% unemployment here in our country, that doesn't seem necessarily so feasible. The second option would be to fund such a program using something like external debt, which once again is becoming more constrained given our junk status. And the third option would be through signage or through printing money or using things like modern monetary theory or some of these other new ideas that are flying around at the moment. And they all come with their own pros and cons, but we really are facing a very constrained economic time going forward. The question is what sort of sacrifices we're going to have to make and which people need to be supported with the budgets that we have. And likely we're going to need to look at ways to redistribute that cash using a combination of all of those different ways in order to find this money. But there's simply less money than there was available a few years ago to initiate these very grand plans.
Bronwyn, the special COVID grant that was announced by the minister recently, all a while back, that comes to an end in October. Does that put a lot of pressure on the government to sort of support these people that have come accustomed to this income?
Well, absolutely, because that's the question. What is going to happen to these people when that money dries up? This is money that's being used to literally put bread on the table. It's not being used for luxuries or being used, just to spend wastefully at all. It's basic cash that is required to support the most vulnerable in our country. And there are so many more very vulnerable people around today than there were just 3 months ago. That's probably one of the bigger issues with these sorts of universal basic income or income support programs. When they are rolled out to large percentages of the population, we do get accustomed to them quite quickly. And it's very difficult to take something away once people have got used to it. This is also an idea that's become very, very popular across the political spectrum in South Africa. We've got people like the Black Sash organization who are saying that not only should it become permanent very, very quickly, it should also be increased by quite a lot to bring it up to making sure that people are being supported above the poverty line. So they're talking about increasing it from 350 Rand all the way up to around about 1,200 Rand odd for everyone that falls into that category, and also without any sort of conditions behind it, which is where the sort of universality comes from with these sorts of programs, because that's always the catch. You don't want these sort of programs to disincentivize people for going back into the job market, because that means they'll have that grant taken away from them. And once again, hugely, hugely ambitious to cover everyone in our population, all the way through from that current missing chunk from the 18-year-olds right up to the 59-year-olds.
Just shortly, will the BIG, the Basic Income Grant, replace existing grants? Will it be easier to administrate?
That's not what's being proposed at the moment. Of course, there are no details. This just came out of a press conference, and the minister said they were still talking about it, but it's firmly back on the table as a priority. That's really as far as they've got at this point in time. Now, in theory, what these programs could have done is they could have simplified that very messy welfare state, cut back on a lot of that dead weight loss, but that's not what I'm seeing that is being proposed here in South Africa. This seems to be something that's going to be added on top of all the other entitlements that we are already giving people at this point in time. So the money is going to have to be found from somewhere else in our very constrained budgets.
Bronwyn, thank you so much.